Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. I'll give you the latest update about important matters pertaining to the country, the economy, as well as our money. My name is Dr. Chhoda, and welcome to our channel. Let's start by taking a look at a very important exchange between CNN's Caitlin Collins and the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. CNN's Caitlin Collins asked the White House Press Secretary if President Biden felt progressives can trust Democrats like Senator Joe Manchin and the Democrat from Arizona, Kristen Sinema. I think Jen Psaki's response was very telling. She said, they can speak to that. I'll let them do that. Let's roll the tape and hear what the White House press secretary had to say. Let's watch.
Based on the conversations that he's had with Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema, since we know that there have been plenty of them, does he feel that progressives can trust them to support the bigger package?
Well, I can't speak for what members of the Progressive Caucus feel will make them confident about the path forward on reconciliation.
Does the president feel that the progressives can trust Manchin and Sinema?
I'm not going to speak for what they think they require to get the vote across the finish line. They can speak to that. I'll let them do that.
And speaking of the White House press secretary, she had to chime in when she was asked about the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell blocking the debt limit increase. She said, I quote, "If that's not politics, I don't know what is." Let's roll the tape and see what she had to say.
And what's so absurd about this is that these are individuals, especially Senator McConnell, who have made very clear in the past about their concerns and the risks of the U.S. government defaulting. This is why it's never happened in the past. It would have a huge, devastating impact on our economy. He knows that. He stated that publicly. He still won't vote for it, and he still is trying to stop us from raising the debt limit. If that's not politics, I don't know what is.
And speaking of what the Republicans are doing, this is very clearly politics, folks. If we don't make changes to the debt ceiling, the country could be in default, which means that the country would be unable to pay its bills and all government services would have to shut down. Now, this kind of political game happens all the time, but what is ironic is that after repeatedly voting to lift the debt ceiling during the Trump presidency, Republicans are threatening to tank the economy for political gain. In fact, this is a direct quote from the Democrats. Let's show you a tweet from the Democrats, and let's show you this brief video clip that shows you all the Republicans who voted to stop the U.S. from defaulting. Well over 100 Republicans in 2019, and in 2021, not a single Republican. Let's roll the tape and watch this. It's pretty incredible. And speaking of incredible, here's a Republican from Montana, Senator Steve Daines, who essentially wants to criticize President Biden for issues on both sides of the border. Apparently, Daines wants more Canadians in America and less Mexicans in America. He says the southern border is too open, while on the northern border, Canadians cannot come into the United States. Folks, this is another episode of the DC Comedy Hour. Yep, folks, more nonsense from the Republican Senator Steve Daines, Republican from Montana, saying President Biden is failing at both borders. Let's roll the tape and watch what he had to say. Check it out.
What's not being talked about a whole lot is what's going on the other border, the northern border. President Biden is failing at both borders, not just the southern border, because of the self-inflicted disarray that he has placed upon this country with his changing policies in President Trump. But on the northern border, Canadians can't come into the United States.
And folks, speaking of President Biden, here's the headline of an article on your screen from Bloomberg. President Biden rushes to rescue the agenda as the Democrats splinter and the clock has started ticking. In fact, House Speaker Pelosi is trying to get this entire vote scheduled, and President Biden and his aides are scrambling to break a deadlock amongst Democrats that has actually stalled the entire economic agenda. In fact, the president canceled a planned trip to Chicago to step up efforts to try and create a compromise between progressives on one hand, individuals like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, individuals like Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal from Washington on one hand, and moderate Democrats like the senator, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, and Senator from Arizona, Kristen Sinema, on the other hand. So these two factions of the Democratic Party are at odds with each other. The progressives on one side and the moderates on the other side. They are warring about the scope of the tax and the spending plan, the $3.5 trillion stimulus plan. In fact, President Biden has dispatched some of his top aides to meet with the Arizona Democratic Senator Kristen Sinema, and her vote is absolutely crucial for the passage of the $3.5 trillion plan, but she simply said, hey, that's too much money and I'm not going to support it. This is a big setback, folks, for the Democrats. In fact, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, has simply said, no, it's not possible. I don't know, I was on their timetable when he was specifically asked about the $550 billion public works measure and whether it would include other aspects. He basically said, nope, I'm going to do things on my schedule and I'm not going to do things based on their timeline. Now, House Speaker Pelosi has promised these moderates that basically their issues were a top priority for her. However, a lot of progressives have said, no, we're not going to back down. This is what Speaker Pelosi said. I think if we come to a place where we have agreement in legislative language, not just principle, but legislative language that the president supports, and then I think that we will come together. So the question is, will this happen? So what did the White House press secretary say, Jen Psaki? She said this: right now, what we're navigating through, what we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and what with everybody involved is comfortable with in order to be able to get enough votes to cross the finish line. So it's very clear, folks, that the Biden administration is working hard. I want you to know that Joe Manchin has hinted that he could support $1.5 trillion, but Kristen Sinema didn't seem so enthusiastic. Now, the Senate Budget Committee Chairman Bernie Sanders does want the $1 trillion package and the $3.5 trillion package to pass. In fact, he was hopeful that the infrastructure bill would fail in the House and will essentially jolt or essentially force moderates like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema to say yes to the larger package. This is a quote from Bernie Sanders. I think that's the right thing to do, and I'm encouraged by that. By the way, he's pushing for a much larger package, something in the range of $3.5 trillion and above. And he said, and I would hope that that sends a signal to every member of the Democratic caucus, including Senator Sinema and Manchin, that we're going to start serious negotiations and pass a very strong reconciliation bill. And folks, Chuck Schumer is trying to get stuff done as well. He said, I quote, we're just asking Republicans to get out of the way. In fact, the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned that the U.S. could default on all its financial obligations on the 18th of October without action from Congress. So folks, there is one piece of good news. It does look like the administration is working with Congress to pass a stopgap spending bill to avoid a government shutdown, although this will reach President Biden at the last minute. And as it happens with government, a lot of things happen at the last minute. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. Please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. A lot of effort goes into the creation, the production of these videos, the thumbnails, the titles, the whole 9 yards. We work on this channel 7 days a week, including weekends. If you want to reward us, please click the like button. Please click subscribe. Please enable notifications. Also follow me on Twitter. This right here is my Twitter feed. You'll be able to keep up with all the latest news stories on Twitter. Don't forget, my Twitter handle is ignition_time. That's ignition_time. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.